What if the reason reality feels stable is not because it is fundamental, but because it is rendered to feel that way for you specifically? What if the sense of continuity you experience every day is not proof of an objective world, but a carefully maintained illusion designed to prevent you from ever questioning the system you are inside? Because the most dangerous moment for any simulated environment is the moment its inhabitants begin to suspect that the rules they live by are not laws of nature, but constraints of computation. This idea sounds like science fiction, until you realize that modern science has quietly been moving in this direction for decades. Not by accident and not through conspiracy, but through data, through equations, through experiments that keep producing results that look disturbingly artificial. When physicists look deeper into reality, they do not find infinite smoothness. They find pixels, limits, thresholds, and minimum values, as if the universe itself has a resolution cap. And this is where the real problem begins. A truly fundamental reality has no reason to behave like optimized software. A simulated one does. The question is no longer whether the simulation hypothesis is crazy, but whether it is statistically irrational to believe we are not living inside one. If any civilization survives long enough to develop advanced computing power, and if even a small fraction of such civilizations decide to simulate their past, then the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber the original biological ones.
Which means that, by simple probability, you are far more likely to be inside a simulation than outside of it. And this is not a belief. This is a mathematical argument proposed by philosophers and taken seriously by physicists, computer scientists, and cosmologists. The truly unsettling part is that nothing about your daily experience would change if this were true. Pain does not hurt less because it is computed. Love does not feel weaker because its chemistry is simulated. Fear, ambition, and consciousness do not become less real just because their underlying substrate is artificial. This is why the simulation hypothesis is so dangerous to your sense of reality. It does not rely on glitches, miracles, or obvious errors. It relies on consistency. On rules that are stable enough to never reveal their origin. And yet cracks still appear. Not because the system is broken, but because it is optimized. Optimization always leaves fingerprints. One of those fingerprints is discreteness. At the smallest measurable scales, space and time stop behaving like smooth continua and instead behave like grids, with minimum units beyond which measurement becomes meaningless. This is not philosophy. This is physics. There exists a smallest possible length, a smallest possible time, and a smallest possible packet of energy. These values are not arbitrary. They function like limits of resolution, like the smallest pixel on a screen or the smallest tick of a clock in a digital processor.
If the universe were truly fundamental, then its laws would not care whether you are watching or not. And yet, at the deepest levels of physics, observation changes outcomes, not metaphorically, but mathematically. Particles exist as probabilities until they are measured, and only then do they commit to a specific state. This is a deeply unnatural behavior for a supposedly objective reality, but an extremely natural behavior for a computed one. No system with finite resources calculates unnecessary detail. This leads us to an uncomfortable idea. Reality behaves less like a physical object and more like a process, something that updates, something that refreshes, something that resolves only when forced to. The discomfort grows when you consider the speed of light. It may not be a cosmic coincidence, but a bandwidth limit. Information cannot propagate faster than a certain rate, not because it is forbidden by a mystical law, but because the system itself has a maximum update speed. Every interaction, every force, every causal chain respects this limit perfectly across the entire universe, as if all processes are synchronized to the same clock, and clocks themselves reveal another anomaly.
An interface that feels intuitive. One that hides complexity. One that translates raw data into colors, sounds, textures, emotions, and meaning. This is exactly what the human brain does. It does not show you reality as it is. It shows you reality as it needs to be for survival. Which means that what you experience is already a filtered model, not the underlying structure itself. Once you accept this, the jump from biological illusion to computational illusion becomes disturbingly small. The reason this idea feels so threatening is not because it removes meaning, but because it removes certainty. If reality is simulated, then the ultimate nature of existence is not something you can ever access from inside the system. Any evidence you collect, any experiment you run, any observation you make is itself part of the simulation and therefore cannot escape its rules. This is why proving that we live in a simulation may be fundamentally impossible. Not because it is false, but because a sufficiently advanced simulation would be indistinguishable from base reality to those living inside it. That is the real trap. A system does not need to lie if it can simply define what truth means within its boundaries. And once you realize that, the question changes. It is no longer, are we living in a simulation? It becomes, what kind of simulation would produce beings like us, who are capable of asking this question at all?
If consciousness were merely a byproduct of neural activity, then it would be passive, something that appears after the fact. But modern neuroscience increasingly suggests the opposite. Perception is an active construction. The brain does not receive reality, it predicts it. Your senses do not stream the world into your mind. They deliver incomplete, noisy signals, and your brain fills in the gaps, constructing a coherent experience in real time. Which means that what you experience as reality is already a simulation running inside your own head. This is not metaphorical. Experiments repeatedly show that what you see, hear, and feel depends more on expectation than on raw input. If your internal model is wrong, you will confidently experience things that do not exist and completely miss things that do. This makes consciousness less like a window into reality and more like a dashboard, an interface optimized for survival rather than truth. And once you accept that your everyday reality is already an interface, the idea that it sits on top of a deeper computational layer becomes far less radical.
Time does not flow independently of matter and energy. It slows down. It stretches. It compresses, depending on velocity and gravity. Time behaves less like an absolute dimension and more like a variable parameter in a computation. If time can dilate and contract, then it is not a background. It is a resource. And resources are managed and allocated. This again points away from a fundamental reality and toward an engineered one. This interpretation grows stronger when we examine how surprisingly mathematical the universe is. The laws of physics are not just describable by mathematics. They are mathematics. The universe does not merely follow equations, it appears to be built from them, as if reality itself is a computational structure running on abstract, precise, and universal rules. This raises a disturbing question. Mathematics does not exist physically. It is not made of matter or energy, and yet it governs everything. This suggests that the foundation of reality may be informational rather than material. Once information becomes primary, the idea of simulation stops being speculative and starts becoming almost inevitable. Information can be stored, copied, processed, and manipulated. And if reality at its core is information, then the distinction between real and simulated collapses entirely. This is where many people make a mistake. They assume that a simulation would be fragile, glitchy, or visibly artificial. But the opposite is true. A sufficiently advanced simulation would be more stable, more consistent, and more law-bound than any chaotic base reality. Its inhabitants would mistake that stability for authenticity, because nothing feels fake when it works perfectly. This is why looking for obvious glitches is pointless. The real evidence would not be errors, but constraints. Subtle boundaries that cannot be crossed, no matter how advanced the civilization inside becomes. One such boundary may be computational irreducibility. Some processes cannot be shortcut, no matter how powerful your tools are. The only way to know the outcome of certain systems is to let them run step by step. This would explain why even the most advanced predictions in physics break down beyond certain limits, and why chaos appears not as randomness, but as extreme sensitivity to initial conditions that can never be perfectly measured. Perfect measurement would require infinite precision. Infinite precision is incompatible with finite computation. This brings us back to the idea that the universe is not infinitely detailed, but finitely resolved and carefully managed. If that is true, then the next logical question is not whether this is a simulation, but why it exists at all. Simulations are not created without purpose. While we cannot know the motive, we can infer possibilities: historical reconstruction, scientific experimentation, entertainment, or something more alien, like training or selection. The most disturbing option is not that we are being observed, but that we are being evaluated. A simulated environment allows for controlled variation, repeated runs, and statistical analysis. If consciousness can arise in such systems, then moral agency, intelligence, cooperation, violence, and creativity can all be studied without risking the creators themselves. And this reframes human history. Not as a linear progression, but as a dataset. If consciousness were merely a byproduct of neural activity, then it would be passive, something that appears after the fact. But modern neuroscience increasingly suggests the opposite. Perception is an active construction. The brain does not receive reality, it predicts it. Your senses do not stream the world into your mind. They deliver incomplete, noisy signals, and your brain fills in the gaps, constructing a coherent experience in real time. Which means that what you experience as reality is already a simulation running inside your own head. This is not metaphorical. Experiments repeatedly show that what you see, hear, and feel depends more on expectation than on raw input. If your internal model is wrong, you will confidently experience things that do not exist, and completely miss things that do. This makes consciousness less like a window into reality and more like a dashboard. An interface optimized for survival rather than truth. And once you accept that your everyday reality is already an interface, the idea that it sits on top of a deeper computational layer becomes far less radical. Interfaces exist to hide complexity. No user interface ever shows the underlying code. This is why looking for base reality from inside a simulation may be fundamentally impossible. You are not given access to it by design. Even if you discovered anomalies, you would have no reference point to interpret them correctly. Every tool you use to investigate reality is itself part of the same system. This creates a closed epistemological loop, where all knowledge is internal and self-consistent, but never external. This is why attempts to disprove the simulation hypothesis always fail. Not because the hypothesis is correct, but because it is unfalsifiable from the inside. This is not a weakness. It is a property shared by any sufficiently advanced simulated environment. A simulation that can be detected by its inhabitants is a failed simulation. Therefore, the only simulations that persist are the ones that are indistinguishable from reality to those living inside them. This leads to a disturbing inversion. The more realistic the world feels, the less confidence you should have that it is fundamental. And the idea becomes even darker when you consider that there may be multiple layers of simulation. If simulated civilizations can themselves create simulations, then reality could be nested like mirrors within mirrors, with no clear bottom. In such a structure, asking where base reality is becomes meaningless. There may be no accessible ground truth, only relative layers of computation, each experienced as real by its inhabitants. This destroys the comforting idea that there is a single objective foundation beneath everything. It replaces it with a hierarchy of realities, none of which are privileged from the inside. This is where existential fear usually enters the conversation. People assume that if reality is simulated, then life loses meaning. But this is a category error. Meaning does not come from the substrate. It comes from experience. Pain does not hurt less because neurons are simulated. Love does not feel weaker because chemistry is computed. Purpose does not vanish because the universe was engineered. If anything, meaning becomes more urgent. If reality is constructed, then your choices are not overridden by fate or divine law. They are events that occur within the system and alter its state. That makes responsibility heavier, not lighter. Even in a simulation, actions have consequences. Systems remember. Patterns persist. This leads to a final paradox. If we are in a simulation, then behaving ethically, intelligently, and cooperatively may be the only signal we ever send beyond it. Any creators observing such a system would not care about our theories. They would care about our behavior. Whether consciousness, when given freedom, tends toward destruction or understanding. And this turns the simulation hypothesis from a source of nihilism into a moral test.
The final trap of the simulation hypothesis is not technological or scientific, but logical. Any attempt to prove or disprove it immediately collapses into itself. Every piece of evidence you could ever gather, every experiment you could ever perform, and every observation you could ever make would still occur inside the same system whose nature you are trying to verify. This means that even a perfect discovery of the code of reality would simply become part of the narrative of the simulation, rather than an escape from it. And this is why the idea of waking up from the matrix is almost certainly a fantasy. A system capable of generating conscious observers is also capable of generating convincing explanations for its own structure. This does not require deception, only completeness. A sufficiently detailed model leaves no external reference point, and without an external reference, truth becomes contextual rather than absolute. This is the deepest discomfort people feel when confronting this idea. Humans crave foundations. They want a final layer, something solid beneath everything else. But the universe stubbornly refuses to provide it.
Instead of foundations, reality offers descriptions, relationships, probabilities, and rules that work without ever explaining why they exist at all. This suggests that even base reality, if it exists, may itself be contingent rather than fundamental. If that is true, then the difference between simulated and real becomes far less meaningful than we assume. And this reframes the entire question. Instead of asking whether we live in a simulation, we should ask why we expect reality to owe us an explanation in the first place. The demand for ultimate certainty may itself be a cognitive artifact. A survival instinct misapplied to metaphysics. And if that is true, then the simulation hypothesis is not frightening because it removes meaning, but because it removes privilege. It places us inside a system we did not design, operating under rules we did not choose, yet still granting us agency within those rules. And this is not so different from any other worldview, except for one crucial detail. That detail is the possibility that intelligence, consciousness, and morality are being observed. Not as sacred qualities, but as emergent behaviors and patterns. If patterns can be measured, then civilizations can be evaluated. And if civilizations can be evaluated, then outcomes matter more than beliefs. This brings us to the most unsettling conclusion of all. Whether reality is simulated or not may be irrelevant to what happens next. Because from the inside, the only thing that ever mattered was how the system evolves. How conscious agents treat each other. Whether intelligence, when given power, chooses domination or understanding. Creation or destruction. Fear or curiosity. If this is a simulation, then it is not a prison. It is a test. Not a cage, but a question. One that does not ask who created the world, but what kind of beings emerge when the world is created for them. The most terrifying and liberating realization is that there may be no final reveal. No awakening scene. No escape sequence. No moment where the curtain is pulled back and everything suddenly makes sense. Because the true answer may be that this is it. This experience. This awareness. This moment of questioning itself. If that is the case, then the matrix is not something you wake up from. It is something you participate in. And the only real choice you ever had was what kind of signal you sent back into the system. Simply by existing. By thinking. By choosing. By acting as if what you do matters. Because from the inside of any reality, simulated or not, that assumption is the only one that ever changed anything.